Hi, my name is Desmond and I am a 3D artist currently working within the AAA games industry. Within this tutorial, I will be covering how to sculpt a creature from start to finish using Zbrush. I will be utilizing reference images that I have gathered and work my creativity to the best of my ability to combine them based on playful visual language to come up with something abstract and entirely new. So without further ado, let's get started. So what I'm going to cover today is mainly sculpting using reference images and just learning how to pick certain things from your reference images and merging them into one thing. It's a very fundamental practice in design. Usually you would incorporate a lot of theory that generally exists within the criteria of real life. So if, for example, you were doing something that you wanted to be quite human-like, then you would basically incorporate a lot of the anatomy and how muscles work and all of that kind of side of things. So in this case, like today, I'm doing something which is a little more abstract. So in this case, it's a little more on the fine art side of design. And this is the reason being is because I'm tackling something that's more like creature art, which essentially has a lot more freedom for, I guess, like creative experimentation. So in this case right now, I'm going to pull up a reference sheet. And what I'm thinking about doing right now is maybe something that is a mix between a pug and something in the direction of a walrus. But I'm gonna try and work something like some weird fungi and plant life into it. So that way, I get a little bit of a psychedelic alien kind of look at the end of it. I actually don't know what I'm gonna do yet, so this will be something I will be doing as I go through this tutorial, but hopefully this will give a nice idea of what you can do when you pull your reference images together and just have fun with it. So to start off, I would like to actually cover one major point in this for me, and it's that I will be using a custom menu during this entire tutorial that I created myself. I won't be including this in the tutorial, but there are so many tutorials on how to do this that you can find on YouTube. But what I will do is I'll pull up my menu now. This is what I use pretty much to optimize my work speed when I'm in Zbrush. And I generally will just be using mainly this upper half here and a few stock brushes here, since there are things here that I have paid for or I use that isn't generic default stock Zbrush brushes. So I will stick to as close to stock brushes as possible, so that way you can follow along. But in terms of going through everything, I will essentially explain where you can find any one of these buttons. For example, like Dynamesh, you would find it in Geometry and down in the Dynamesh tab here. And that's where I got this button from. I will show you where everything is as it goes. So for the time being, let's dive into this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the size. So if you go down to deformation and you get size and you just drop that a little bit, because it tends to be quite big when you start off. So when you activate things like Dynamesh, again, up here, Dynamesh, it essentially activates Dynamesh and everything's like not super fine. And I'll show you why. Like if I turn this off, if I Control Z this and then go to Dynamesh again, you see that the polygons are way more fine now. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I have I think, to be honest, this doesn't really matter. It's just more like personal preference. I like to bring it down. You don't have to. But I find that this, gives me a lot more flexibility with my polygons later on. So after you've turned down the size, I'm just gonna basically, since Dynamesh is already activated, I'm gonna activate again. And there you have all of your topology kind of like ready to go. So in this case now, I want to turn on symmetry, and let's just have an idea of what we want to do. So in this case, so I'll go back to here. I kind of want the base to look like a pug. I think if we start off making the shape of a pug, I kind of like this because it's kind of dopey, and I think it's quite funny to start with, and the form is it's soft, it's quite nice. I like the general shape of this, so I think I'm gonna try and start off by making something that generally is in this direction. So let's start off by using the move tool, which if you press B, you can find in here. This is very early stuff, so I'm assuming that you already know when these brushes are anyway. So with the move tool, just gonna start just generally getting some of this kind of like blobbiness in. What we want is we kind of want to get that bust shape first, and I guess like sometimes actually I really like to work with the clay brush. I usually turn this quite high, and this is where I could probably start just kind of blocking in the shape of things. So I'm using like a mix of like holding Alt to make it to Z sub, and from Z add to Z sub, that way I can bring it in a bit. And honestly, at the beginning, it's kind of it always, I find that whenever I start like a sculpt, the first stage is always where you honestly have no clue if it's going to work out. So you gotta keep doing it until something kind of starts to come about. We'll put some of these rolls in the back. I want something quite fat. I think fat is fun and it's cute on animals. Z remesh. So Z remesh, you hold Control and you click and drag onto the background, and it will Z remesh. It will dynamesh the sculpt, which means essentially it will recalculate all of the topology and even it out. So for example, this is all stretched now. You can see from the polygons. If you hold Control and click and drag, you can see it's like basically normalized all of that topology and reconstructed it. So this I've done a lot of mild sculpting there. I'm going to try and go back to the move brush and just try and find something here. I feel like this is a bit too direct. I kind of want something more like this. I guess like some small gestures here and there. I don't want to go too deep into the detail because it's too early to go that deep into it, because you want to kind of get a general shape of how you want things. Honestly, it's like just looks like it actually kind of works out because it kind of starts to look a little bit like the walrus in here, which was what I was kind of going for. So in this case, like I kind of want a little more, I want a better idea of like what this might look like from different angles. So if I kind of switch it around, so it's like maybe if it's a little bit higher, I can get a better idea of what the top might be like. So in this case, I feel like this top could probably be a little bit more on the squished kind of side, where this is kind of like, you know, more like here. So in this case, so something more like in this direction. And I guess like for the neck, I am probably gonna just make this like this. And like for the sake of it being a bus, I'm just gonna build a base. Yeah, let's make this space bigger. Something like this. We can always fix this later. So let's keep going with this. I think one thing I want is maybe... I like this section of the mouth. I like the droopiness. So I reckon what we could do is... I'm gonna try and work in the eyes of a walrus, then the mouth of the pug. Because I think, like, essentially if I took the eyes of the pug and I used the walrus's mouth, it would kind of look just like a pug, I would say. So maybe it'd be more interesting to do it that way. So let's work with the eyes of a walrus. So in this case, let's append something. So appending would be in subtool and down to this menu here. So it's over here. So this will essentially add another subtool into your file. So in this case, I want a polysphere. And so it's going to overtake everything here. So if you hold Alt and click on the sphere, it will switch between subtools. So you can see I'll now have this thing selected. So if I Alt click, it quickly switches to that. So I'm gonna move to the scale tool there. I'm gonna drag this down. What I want is I want something big enough to be eyes. So let's move this into something like here. And you know, let's just leave it as this for now. Like, you know, this is where I want the eyes to be. That's somewhere I could start with. And then what I want to do is I want to mirror this. So I will use mirror and weld, but you can find mirror and weld in geometry. I believe it's in modified topology. Yes, so mirror and weld. Oh, it says multiple. I need to delete my lower segments first, so there's no steps of subdivisions in this sphere. And I'm going to hit mirror and weld, and now it's on both sides. Turn on mirror just in case. And this is something I want to start with. So let's, with the clay brush, I'm just going to start just giving a little bit of detail to the eye section, just to ground it in. And I said I wanted the pug mouth. I really like this one. It's kind of grumpy. It's adorable. Let's work with that. So in this case, let's have the nose that's inside. I've got an idea for the nose later, but I wanna just really emphasize And this is kind of in good direction already with that. And honestly, like, this won't look all that impressive right now since it's so really early on, but like, I'm just kind of blocking in the idea of where things are. You know, I think what's necessary is to find the ears. So I had an idea for the ears, essentially. I wanted to use kind of like one of these kind of fungi kind of profiles for the ears. Like, I was thinking like it would be nice to have maybe like this plant-esque kind of stuff that goes for like these parts. Something a little more in the direction that's just generally not normal. It's just really weird. I think that's a really good way to approach things sometimes. I'm really into psychedelic art, so a lot of this stuff can often have this kind of stuff. I really like the texture of this stuff, which I'll work in a little bit later. I'll find somewhere to put it, but for now, I'm thinking, I don't know, I think this will work. I think I could use these as the ears. I could turn them into something like that. So in this case, let's append again. So, you know, through the subtool append thing, I'm going to use it from my menu. So I'm going to let's just take a cylinder, and I've switched that subtool, and now I'm going to scale it down. Gonna kind of just move it, and honestly, I need an object there. It doesn't need to like be too much. Like it doesn't need to look like this thing. I just want to make sure that I have something there to use. And then I'm just gonna activate Dynamesh on this. And now I'm just going to absolutely destroy this cylinder. Just try and, I guess, make this kind of shape with it. With the hoop intended as well, I think. So, in this case, I'm gonna drag this up. And I'm gonna rotate this because I think it needs a bit of rotation. And the way this connects back to the ear, the way it connects back to the head, I think I could probably mix something between, let me just like mirror this first so I've got a better idea of representation. I think generally, yeah, if we start with something like this, I reckon I could actually work something like, maybe we could work something like this to connect it into the main head. Like, I'll get around to that. Let's just make this first form first. Let's just like, let's play around with this first. I'm going to flip this way so it's like the same orientation. Because I want something like this. And let's go to the clay brush. I forgot that this is a pretty strong brush right now. So let's just play around with this a bit. Just kind of getting into the crevice there, just to kind of give it a little bit of form. And I'm starting to feel like the back is a little bit boring. So we're gonna do at the back. Maybe we could treat it like there's like a third ear coming off, or maybe more like hair. We could put hair on the back. That could be something like this. That'd be really pretty. Yeah, I'm gonna go for the really obvious stuff first. So let's go with the tusks from the walrus. I want something like that in there. It doesn't have to be as long. Let's see what we get with it. So append that. Go with another cylinder. Let's shrink that down. Move that forward. Ooh. That big. Let's just work that in. So in terms of like the whole, I was saying about how you would go and take certain theory from things that already exist, in terms of like anatomy and so forth. Like in this case, because of the way tusks are generally built into the the upper jaw of a walrus, this stuff pretty much goes into where your molars would be. So, it's like it would come up to here. So I gotta make sure that this aligns in that way. So in this case, it's like, you want to make sure that this is essentially sitting within the head like that. So let's like reactivate Dynamesh and let's get this going. So I'm just gonna give it a slight move and slim that down. I think I slimmed it down too much, so I'm gonna do something like that. Yeah? And then I'm just gonna mirror that for now. These are just really basic placeholders. Honestly, I think I made it too long. I think it'd be cuter if it wasn't as long. So I just press Y while you're in move mode, and you can flip to the old widget, well, the old transpose tool that the old Zbrush had. You just click and shift click drag it so it's straight, and just kind of drag it to where I want. And something like that, Yeah, this looks very puggy and walrusy, but not adventurous enough, I would say. I think what I would probably do is maybe think of another animal to kind of mix into this in its own way. Or maybe not even an animal, maybe I could mix in something that's full of shells. I think like actually it'd be kind of cool to put, something like carapace on this somewhere. Let's get the general shapes down. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to break away from the pug and give it more of the walrus hump in the back. So I select this and go to move. I'm just going to flip the orientation of this. So now we can get away with a lot chubbier results. Something like that. There we go. Now this is a little more walrusy, but it's very walrusy. We can probably work in a bunch of that hug kind of essence, and then when we get to like finer details. Let's start with the nose in this case. Let's just give him like a very doggy dog nose. Actually, I remember for the nose I was going to try something like this because I want something that was alien. And I think this is generally quite an alien thing. Quite terrifying in its own way, but I think we could do something with that. So let's push up the resolution bit, which is also here in the subtool Dynamesh category. We want to bring the resolution up, and what this means is just once you re-Dynamesh, you have more resolution in polygons. So now I've put up via Control Shift Drag. Now it's like giving me a much more dense kind of sculpt. So in this case, let's just redefine some of this stuff. Let's go through this one more time. Let's get that dog shape first. So, And let's get that dog kind of mouth. Let's work those tusks in a bit more. And I really enjoy doing like sculpts like this because to be honest, there's a lot of stuff you can get away with, so it just feels like having fun. A lot of the time when I do like professional work, everything that we do needs to have a reason. Like the worst thing to do is to make something because it looks cool, right? And in this essence, like what I am doing is pretty much I'm just building art based on what I think looks cool. And as much as the commercial industry disagrees with that mindset, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it when you want to have fun. So doing this kind of stuff makes me happy. Like just making stuff from my imagination. And honestly, sometimes you make some pretty cool stuff that probably has no commercial use, but something fun to put up on the internet and see whether people like it or not. So let's have a look. Let's go a little bit more on the walrus side now. I think I actually like that this joins a little like that. And I like this here. Let me see if I can work that in. That's like something like that. And let's try and work those eyes because we've got more geometry to do this now. And I might need to bring some of that down. Like it's gonna be hard to fit this in right now with the amount of polygons I have. Something from this should be usable. I'm trying to find the abstract shapes in here that might be useful. So based on this, it's like kind of like this is. I'm thinking maybe we could do like a nose that dips inwards, like I guess something almost like something that kind of connects like this, maybe. Something that's almost like this. But you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just mixing things together just for the fun of it. And even though it doesn't look like anything in real life would have this, like it's there's some really cool concepts that you can develop from doing it. So like do that. So now what I've kind of done is like I've developed this open nose, like open nostril kind of idea, which kind of looks like this. And that was just me flipping like a reference backwards, not backwards, like upside down. And this is, like what I would do sometimes. I'll look for certain things in my reference and see what can be usable. So in this case, let's say, maybe the tusk could be something like this actually. Oop. Maybe the tusks could be like that. Or maybe the tusks aren't even tusks and they're almost like whiskers, but they are shaped like this. So maybe we could do that. Let's turn the resolution. Let's move this around and get a bit crazy with it. Ooh. turned on mirror, so you have something a little more symmetrical to use. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a cutout. I'm going to hold Control and Shift, and I'm going to click on this and select, let's just do select lasso, and I'm going to just select this middle section with Control and Shift. So it was Control and Shift I needed to. So Control and Shift is what activates the lasso, and if you go to select lasso and you select your selection there, if you hold Alt, it will turn red, and you can remove whatever was there. So with that, I've now removed what's in the middle. Well, I've actually masked what's in the middle. So I will now delete hidden, which should be you should be able to find that in modified topology here. So it's like geometry, modified topology, delete hidden. So if I delete hidden, now all those faces that I removed before, they are actually gone now. And if only like Dynamesh was as simple as like, you just click and drag, you control click and drag to like make it a hole, but it doesn't. So what you need to do is you need to use a different brush, which is so you press B, and if you go to curve bridge, so it's like C and then 7, that'll activate curve bridge. And with that activated, if I just isolate this selection there, if you I believe it's if you click down, hold Shift, and then drag to the hole, it will lasso that section. And then what you want to do is you want to go to the back side and do the exact same thing. So click, drag, Shift, and then that will select the other side, and then it will just create all the faces in between. Just like that. Correct. Yeah. So if I now switch back to, let's just go back to my move brush here. I want to now just make sure that I have retopologized that with Dynamesh, and now I've got this hole in there. The thing is, there's nothing on that side, so I can mirror and weld. Oh, I'll mirror it first. Mirror you can find in deformation. So if you, so I'm just gonna do it here. So I've got mirror, because I want on that side to copy to this side. And if I click mirror and weld again, there you go. So let's do something like this. So what I want to do first is I want to move this around so we have that kind of feel. I'll get really, really small and smooth it out a bit. And I want this to kind of be like that. Let's bring this. I think like it's kind of cool with how it will flare outwards. So it's very unconventional, where it will be like thick in the middle randomly like this. I used to inflate. So inflate brush, you can just be I, and then well I've already got selected, but N, it would be the last key you'd hit. And you just want to make sure it doesn't get too thin, because if it gets too thin, when you Dynamesh, it starts to get rid of it. So you see there, now it's like gone. So you want to make sure generally it's not too thin, so you always inflate to make sure you fight anything that gets too thin. Sometimes it's good to make it really thin, so it kind of levels out things, and then you thicken it up together, so that way it's like nice and smooth. Yeah, just like that. So I don't like how thin it is on the sides here, so I also need to inflate that here. And I know there's a third one on the inside, but I kind of don't want that one. I kind of like that this is this shape on its own and it's kind of flat. So what I think I'll do is I'm going to just rotate this. You know, so it's not just like that. I think like something like this is kind of cool. Maybe we could even actually experiment with this now a little more. Maybe something like this. About that to the other side as well. It's just an idea. We can come back to this and refine it, but what I did want was just that whole. Yeah, so I've got the turn back mirror. And just for the sake of making sure that this actually looks like it would be stable to bite down on. Maybe I'll turn up the resolution just to make sure it doesn't collapse on itself like that. Okay, we'll come back to that part later. I think I want to get this, actually I'm going to bring this a little bit up again because it's dropped too much. So let's go back to the main head. And let's just think about more on the form. Maybe we could even implement this as almost like a crown for it, like it comes out of its head between the ears. That could be pretty cool. We probably could. I'm just thinking, maybe not as intricate as all of these holes, but maybe something in that idea. So if I like, for example, if I append, let's say another sphere into this, I'm just gonna drop the size of this again. Bring this up. Okay, so let's turn this into a Dynamesh. And let's press X to mirror, and let's just move the hell out of this. So I want to get a little bit of spread, and I want to pull things out. Just keep re-dynameshing, so I just get a little bit more out of the mesh. I'm just going to inflate this so it doesn't get too thin. Let's just work on the idea of something like this. So let's bring that together. Let's bring this up and this forward so it's doing its own thing. You know, maybe we could treat this like it's got some kind of horn thing. Maybe this is just like, kind of like, it's a little bit like a, you know, like a, how deer and lambs and stuff have like horns coming out, but we're just gonna go with something that's very abstract, just weird across the board. I think something in the direction of like some kind of coral reef looking thing. And then we could probably put some cool fungi texture across the top of it. You know? Like this is already kind of looks like, you know, this could become something, I feel. And you know, obviously you want to kind of ground this in as well, so you know, you would add how it would go in to the head. Maybe this could dip in and come back out, I don't know. Like there's a lot of room for experimentation right now. It's like that, you know? I'm gonna make that thicker so it feels like something. this is already a lot more interesting. So it took a little bit more time to do a little bit more reference digging. I wanted a few more ideas on how I could push this further away from these two main things, because right now it's very obvious that this looks just directly like these two things. So I want to bring in maybe a little bit more on the fungi aspect, and I have this idea in my head where I kind of want like the front of this creature to have a similar cage, almost like almost like the throat to a toad, but with this. And I was thinking maybe this could reach something like this that creeps around to the back. So this will go a little bit further than just a normal bust, but we'll try and keep it close. So let's start with this. I'm going to start with, I guess, moving this back. So move this back this way a bit. And let's just create that crevice that I want. Maybe something around like this. And just forward a bit so it kind of cups it. Remesh. And yeah, I think this is a good starting point. So let's append in a sphere. And let's go and shrink this down. And I'm going to use this to just pull all over the place. So let's dynamesh this. Yeah, we'll keep this kind of low because I want to keep this easy first. Let's just pull this in all kinds of directions. So let's start off this way. I'm gonna need more subdivisions. How silly of me, I should have known that from the beginning. And let's just, I want this to almost radiate from his throat. So I think I should pull this into here. Just keep remeshing as you go. So you have more to work with, essentially. Seems like I'm losing resolution, so let's bring it up. There we go. Let's pull this to the middle a bit, so we get that all. And let's inflate, so we don't get too thin. It's getting really thin at the moment. And let's just create that circle first, so let's pull this in and out. This around. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm just building that cage. You can pretty much get the gist of what I'm trying to do here. I'm just going to inflate all this. There's a lot more to work with. So it's nice that's connected now, so I can actually inflate that to make that one whole thing. Let's put that cage coming. Just drag this over. There we go, we complete that cage. Now, this is where we start making all the holes. Just connect these together. Maybe correct some of this as well. Honestly, this is getting really messy at the moment, I know, but we will fix this. It's always fixable. So I'm kind of just dragging things around and remeshing it, just to kind of do my shape exploration. I actually do this a lot when it comes to trying to explore certain languages within the form of the model. but it does get quite tedious and repetitive, but it's a very important part of the process. Deflame, deflame. I'm just smoothing this at the moment, holding shift. I feel like I should pull this back more so it doesn't collide with the teeth with the tusks as much. And then we can switch the subtool and bring this back so we can hide this a bit better. Okay, I like the block out of this so far, so it's kind of going in the direction I want. What I want to do is get a little bit more out of that cage. I think generally while you're sculpting something, it always starts off a little bit rough. Well, not even a little bit rough. Usually a lot of the time it just looks really bad. And I mean, I've said this before, but it's just a lot of the early processes of the sculpting process is just like trying to get a checkpoint or like a position on the model or just a shape on the model that sits there as a placeholder for you to kind of assess, and then you then move on to another part of the sculpt, and having that previous part that you blocked in kind of really helps drive the direction of the next piece. And if you notice, I kind of jump back and forth on this process. Like I've done this constantly throughout the entire tutorial. I keep jumping back and forth because it helps me kind of develop a better imagination on what this could become. Let's pull this around so it doesn't look like a weird, scary, well, a weird shocked face at the moment. Although it's going to look this way since this is like two eyes at the moment, I need to break this so it breaks away from that kind of feel. Either way, this is a good direction, something different. I really like things that are generally quite different in design. The idea is that this would kind of look like it's crawling through its surface and into the back, which would transition into something like this on the back. Maybe with some designs like this. I think this looks really cool. It would be nice, almost like as if this is an animal that was like mutated with like coral reef or some weird undersea type thing. It kind of goes well with the way the top half here looks as well. So let's give that a try. Let's append something. Let's just do a cylinder this time. Let's just bring this in. Let's just get weird with it. So let's this is like a lot to tackle in one go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and take this main form here and turn that into almost like antlers from the back. Let's give that a try. So let's diminish this again, put on symmetry. Let's just pull this all over the place. When you pull it, the more unique you get. You kind of want that distortion where it's just broken. this down this way. Let's figure out how the orientation will be. I think okay, I'm just going to use a clay brush for this part because I like doing this volume. It's easier, much easier generally when you sculpt some of this stuff because it gives you a lot more variety to the surface. As when you pull things around, everything generally always looks so smooth and it's hard to get an idea of things. So now I can like start pulling some of this stuff out. Just keep remeshing, get some weird shapes like this. So as I've been going through this tutorial, I realized my commentary has slowed down quite a bit. This is quite natural because generally I had a lot more information to show you at the beginning, but a lot of this process has been just reusing the same stuff I've been showing. But with that being said, I guess a lot of this is just learning the fundamentals and then just practicing them and using them over and over until you get comfortable. In this case, I think like a lot of what I've been doing is just thinking out loud, but hopefully along that process is kind of helping as well. Let's keep pulling this. I think at this point what I'm going to do is I'm going to break true symmetry and bring this out, start turning that, bringing it in. Just see what we can get with this. And even more, not really out. With this, we can actually, break the symmetry entirely now. I'm not going to use like mirror anymore, obviously. We can actually, I will, but I'm going to symmetry this really well to the other side. And now I'm going to turn mirror back on. So now I've got like two things going at the same time. You can really see that this is generating some pretty cool ideas. Let's try and like fit this into the mesh a bit more. Like just something weird. Let's have this like flare back out so it's almost like some of that fungi. Like I don't know, like kind of like this edging where it just gets really weird. This kind of stuff. Yeah, we could probably do some of this on the back now actually. Like try and aim for those shapes. So that flares out like this. It could be kind of cool. And like I was saying before, like I want this to kind of embed into it, so it's kind of like I don't want to pull that first part. Let's pull it out this way. It's just, yeah, generally all of this kind of stuff. So just like I can feel like it fits. I kind of want it to be almost like veiny kind of overgrowth. But I want to see it kind of thread in and out of the surface a bit. Doing stuff is usually pretty hard to sell. It's like you need to make sure that it kind of feels like it's actually growing into it. But I think like this won't happen until I sculpt it into the actual main base where the head is. I'm really hoping by this point you kind of get what I mean by like this feels a little more like fine art. Like there's a lot of principles in here that just don't make sense, but like making sculpts like this are really fun. I really enjoy doing this stuff, even if half the time things don't make sense. It's just sometimes things don't need to make sense. It's kind of cool to make some things that don't have any real logic to it. as long as like you try to bring it back towards like a little bit realism, something that does kind of fly in the realm of like reality. This is the fun thing about design. Like sometimes, just doing things for fun is what generates some really cool results. And honestly, doing stuff like this I find really helps your sculpting in general. Like I've learned so much and gotten so comfortable with sculpting from just doing stuff like this. Just for fun. Because sometimes just watching tutorials isn't enough. Actually, I'm gonna be honest, like most of the time, only watching tutorials isn't enough. You need to make sure you actually, putting practice in. Like tutorials really teach you a lot of stuff, but it's always necessary to still, actually put in the time and the practice in trying to get, better at a program or more comfortable with it. It's the only way you learn, in a way. Okay, let's go back into the main base now and try and add a little bit of just a little bit of like a swelling or bloating around where these things touch. I just want to turn this into some kind of, I don't really know how I'm going to do it. It turns into something that's almost like, I guess like veiny or boily, something lumpy. We'll figure out the texture as we go. Like, it's necessary in its own way. And I really don't like how flat this bottom is. I'm gonna just quickly do something cool with it. So again, it feels more like a bust. Just gonna pull that out. And I'm just gonna, I guess, I'll just trim adapt it for now. And then trim dynamic. So it's something I would usually do when it comes to making rocks, but I'll figure it out as it goes. I just like completely messed up that bottom. Bring that back out. So this is getting too thin, I'm going to bring that back out. And I think I just turned this into a fish. If I just add like a little tail here, it's kind of like a weird sea lion coral fish thing. No worries. Essentially, like, I have stuff I could work with here. This is kind of cool. There's something I can do with this. Let's keep refining the back. I think it deserves much more attention at this point. I'll try to add some of these shapes to it. Maybe I can have some coming out of here. That could be kind of cool for the silhouette. I'm just gonna teach you something new. I'm gonna if you mask an end or something, if you go to subtool, there's extract, which is very useful in there somewhere. Down here. If you hit extract, what it will do is like it will take your masking and create a I guess like an extraction of that piece, almost like using Shell and something like 3ds Max or like any 3D package, where it extrudes something out and then like makes it double-sided. So essentially, if you just hit extract, it will show you the preview, and then you have to hit accept. And now it's like it's got the selection that you had before, but it's turned it into like, just that. So that's a really useful way to start something off as well if you don't want to just append everything. So now with that, I can go to Dynamesh and let's start making one of these kind of weird fin things. I guess it's like this, and then this comes out a bit. And then this part also comes out a bit. Oh. And let's just refine this now. Don't worry, we get into a lot more detail later. This is like actually one of the hardest parts. This is literally the hardest part of the entire process, just getting that initial idea down. Going into detail is really easy afterwards. Like, it's just repeating the same things over and over until it polishes up, essentially. Maybe we could do something like that. I actually think, like, I think this could be longer, actually. So I'm gonna mask that. I'm gonna blend it. If you hold Control and click on it, it softens the mask. So now if I Control and click the background, it invert. If I move to the Move tool, now I can kind of extend that. Like that. I don't like how straight this is, so let's give it a little bit of wobble. Straight is not always the best. I kind of want this to flare outwards a bit as well.